Star Wars is the third worst institution of man. Now, I'm not saying that it's my third least favorite fiction. I'm literally saying it's worse than all of the other things which do create a measure of imbalance, or some might say evil, in the world as part of their doctrine or as an effect of their doctrine. There's lots of things you could look at, all of the reasons that we have wars, everything involved with crime and punishment, things that generally sort of disgust people at the deepest moral level, whilst other people relish such things. These are all problematic things in society. But the reason that I'm telling you that Star Wars is the third worst thing that humans do is because the first worst thing is Satanism and all of its cults. The second worst thing is Scientology, which I have explained in a previous upload, how that it is penultimate to Satanism itself for the goals that Satanism has. And number three in that is following the exact same extrapolation of logic, and you'll find Star Wars there. Why is that? Because it's at the top of science fiction. No matter what any other science fiction does, fantasy has a little bit of a harder time to overpenetrate culture. Harry Potter did it quite well, and it's full of the same problems that I'm describing, but it's much lower on the imperative scale than Star Wars, because Star Wars talks about so many things that have been given to people in mostly the modern day to replace the truth of human history. And this is trying to say that, well, we had no concept of truth from our beginnings, so the truth must always be somewhere in the future in larger quantity than we're able to access it before a developmental point. This seems true based on logic, but the truth isn't always logical to the mind. So when you have this infinite creation that they call the galaxies far, far away, long time ago, it replaces human history and gives you a completely fantastic notion. And what do they fill it with? Well, they fill it with beasts that are no more amazing than the beasts of the world, if you truly look at them in their volume. And the other thing that it does is it translates basically racist conceptions of culture and just sort of smears it over all of these beast archetypes that they give a manner of voice like blub, blub, shub, blub, blub. It doesn't mean anything. Like all the rest of what they say, it doesn't mean anything, but it is doing something. And what it's doing is very toxic. So let's look at the entire chronology and who we could say the protagonist is for such a endeavor as this. I mean, even the Odyssey and the Iliad, it was actually focused on Homer. Okay, so it's similar in Star Wars because Obi-Wan Kenobi is the protagonist. And you'd say, well, how can that be? Because he dies in the first movie. Yeah, because it's a chronology, and he always planned it to be long-spanning so it could shake culture the way that Scientology has shaken culture. And it does it through lies, and it does it through reversal, not refinement, of the storytelling archetypes. So Obi-Wan Kenobi, he's a protagonist, but he doesn't act like a protagonist. So who are you told to focus on as the protagonist? Who plays that role in the inversion? Well, it's Anakin. He grows up into the antagonist in the first movie. And it's thought to be, well, it's profound, imagine telling a story like that. No, it's not. It's telling you that the hero is the bad guy. Because it's always teaching you bad lessons about reality, and it's trying to convince you that this is convincing. Let's just, give this creation a god, but, we won't actually have a god, we'll have a force. Just like atheistic science, backs them on that criterion. And then we'll give it a religion, but we won't make it a religion. We'll make it some kind of Buddhism with magic swords, and we'll defer to this previous pattern of generalized racisms and express it through British dignitary oligarchy. And then say that that's the problem with the world, and it's why this previous civilization crashed. You see how redundant and basic it is about actually delving into what's going on in the human psyche and how to resolve it with people in the world today. Because if you abjure your history and then just borrow from cultural tropes and idioms that provide nothing but antagonism, not only will you not come to understand people better, you will make the situation with them in the world worse. So it's the third biggest thing that's doing that in the world after Satanism, which isn't, the money system and all of the celebrities who just think it's, they're doing it for kicks. They're not doing it because they would be in a cult if they had no money. And you must understand that to make a critical distinction or judgment in the world, in what these things are and how they truly operate. So the second one is Scientology after Satanism. And the third one is the biggest thing that comes out of the foundational work that Scientology required to manifest through this false prophet, if there was ever a more apt title, L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah. Here's this guy who comes out and decries the entirety of religion in its full scope and then says he's a prophet. Okay, well, he couldn't have done that without science fiction. So you show me a more problematic science fiction than the incestuous tale of the bastard son of evil that is the protagonist. And then just, we'll rehash that concept on the same skeletal framework of all the problems that we have when we deny God's existence.